So the xBrat BIAS Depth Heatmap, I'm going to go through the basics and where it fits into a philosophy of a strong trading strategy with simple rules. So what is the BIAS Depth Heatmap? It's a go, no-go gauge. It gives you confirmation or it doesn't give you confirmation. It's a simple rule. If it gives you confirmation, you go. If it doesn't, you don't go. And that's simple. So it's a subchart that looks up 6 time frames and gives you the real-time bias on all of those time frames. So whether it's bullish, neutral, or bearish on each level. So it makes decisions, acting on trading signals a lot easier. These simple rules are easier to follow. If you've got a signal, if you've got all 6 time frames in the same color, it's green. If you've got a long signal, then you've got a confirmation. You can act on that trading signal. If you haven't, you don't act. So what is the bias? So the bias is calculated using 3 EMAs and their relative position to each other to give the 3 states, bearish, bullish, or neutral. And it looks on every individual time frame to see what that is. So this is the BIAS Depth Heatmap as a subchart, but it's skewed out so you can see all levels. The current chart time frame that you're on is at the top. And then as you go down the BIAS Depth Heatmap, you get the depth of those higher time frames. Obviously, if it's green, it's bullish bias. If it's yellow, it's a neutral bias. And if it's red, it's a bearish bias. And these are particular time frames on this instance here. 1 minute, 3, 5, 15, 30, 60. And then this is what it looks like when it's move back down to be the heat map. As you can see here, we run through some really strong bullish times, and then we start to go bearish and neutral, and then we come back to bullish again. But again, it helps you identify those biases on all of those higher time frames. Very, very strong. So the BIAS Depth Heatmap strategy settings. So we have 3 settings on there, one for scalping, one for day trading, and one for swing trading. So the scalping, we're looking at 1, 3, 5, 15, 30, and 60. Day trading, we're looking at 5, 15, 30, 60, 120, 240. And then swing trading, we're going 60 through to monthly. And again, these are specific and it looks at those time frames and tells you where the bias is. So some simple examples on how to use it. So these 3 examples are using our range breakout indicator. So that's the signal. In the first instance on the left, we've got the European gold pit open. The opening range is identified here. The range is actually identified as green, it's bullish. But when we look down on the BIAS Depth Heatmap, all 6 time frames are green. That's a go. We take the trade out of that range and it goes. Conversely now, we get a New York Stock Exchange open. This bias is defined. The bias is defined as red, as you can see on the chart, but the BIAS Depth Heatmap, 2 of those 6 time frames are neutral. We simply don't take the trade. And this is what happens. We do it, go down a little bit, but then it reverses. Later on in the session, we do what's called a continuation trade. When it comes out through the top, comes back in again, and the bias turns red. All 6 time frames are red, so we're looking for that continuation trade out of that range short, and this is the resulting trade because we had the confirmation from the BIAS Depth Heatmap. Now let's look at more of a scalping setting on the slingshot that we've got to give us the signal. So this runs through a scenario of a period of time, and the whole thing about the BIAS Depth Heatmap is it reduces the churn of trades. So you don't need to trade 20 times a day. You need the ones that actually run. To do that, you need the bias backing you up. So these first trades the sell, 2 buys, and the sell here, look at the BIAS Depth heat map. Totally mixed, green, yellow, red. You don't act on those trades, okay? And this is a no trade. The next signal, we get a sell signal at this point here. Again, the BIAS Depth heat map, we're red, 2 yellows, red, 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 red. So we're not quite there. It does work a little bit. It doesn't really run. It comes back and takes us at break even, but we're not interested in those trades. We're looking for confirmation. Then we get these buy signals here. Again, the BIAS Depth heat map doesn't give us the confirmation, so we don't take there. It only reaches target 2, comes back and takes us out for break even. Now the next trade is the one that's worth waiting for. We get a pullback into the pullback zones, we get a type 1 sell, all 6 time frames are red, we go short, hits target 1, target 2, target 3, continues to go down with the trailing stop on the right there to make a good profit. So the BIAS Depth heat map is there for confirmation. If you don't get the confirmation, you don't take the trade. It gets rid of a lot of that waste, that time in trades, those fees that you're being charged, and you're just not getting the runners. Signal and then the confirmation. If you don't get it, you don't take it. Trading is about being patient, and it's about looking for the right setup with all the stars aligned, and the BIAS Depth heat map helps you do that. So how the BIAS Depth heat map fits into a strong strategy. So this is my philosophy, and it's been this for 20 years. It's even in my book that's called Confluence, Not Coincidence. So how does it fit in? And this is important. So first of all, a lot of people get a signal, and it doesn't have to be one of our signal generators from xBrat, but I've just put the slingshot in there as an example. So when you get a signal, you shouldn't act on it straight away. You need that confirmation, and this is where the BIAS Depth heat map comes in. Okay, if you do not get a confirmation, so if you get a long signal and we've got a bit of green, bit of yellow, bit of red in there, that is not the conversation. You do not take the trade. That's the simple rule. We're filtering out the lower probability trades. If you do get a signal here, the next step is, have you got fresh air to trade into? So you could have had a long signal. You've got all 6 time frames of green, but have you got enough fresh air? Are you far enough away from the next resistance zone to trade into? If not, you don't trade. Down the bottom here, it's 3 simple rules: signal, confirmation, fresh air. If you do have fresh air to trade into, then take the trade. You're filtering out those low probability trades, and the BIAS Depth heat map is a very, very important part of that process. There's lots of signal generators out there, and they will generate signals on a rules-based system, on an algorithm. That algorithm doesn't take into account those biases on higher time frames. It doesn't take into account where those short-term or even long-term support and resistance zones are. So what I'm going to do also for Ninja Trading users, the Guardian zones is our totally automated support and resistance zones that on multiple time frames. It just prints them on your chart, take them off when they're broken, and it's really, really cool. So what I'm going to do in the link down below this video, you're going to get a link to watch a similar video like this, but on the Guardian zones, to show how to use that. It's all a simple flow: signal, confirmation, fresh air. If you don't get confirmation from the BIAS Depth heat map, you do not trade. That's the simple rule. Be mechanical about this. They will appear. You just need to wait for the stars to align, and they will align. If you do get that confirmation, you need fresh air to trade into. You don't want to be shorting into support. If you've got support just below a signal that says short and you've got the confirmation, you simply don't take it. That's the rule. If you've got fresh air, then you take the trade. Hopefully that helps. Check out the links below this video for the Guardian zones, and I'll probably put in there the slingshot as well, because that's a great trading strategy, and the range breakout, because I've mentioned that in the video as well.